some moderators who run the show for us. We have moderators. They're volunteers, and they help keep things going. But Chris and I go in there and we do our own work. And we respond to people and we talk to people because we don't consider ourselves better than anyone else. In fact, there are a lot of people there really a lot smarter than we are. So we work with them.
Well, they take me to school. We won't even get into that. But yeah, there are some very, very bright people at forum.theparacast.com.
And we're not selling anything there. It's free. Okay? It's free. You join it, you participate, or you don't participate. You could lurk. Sit back, learn. Another comment from the person in question says, we shouldn't be negative about past shows. Well, if we got a guest who did a lousy job or didn't demonstrate a knowledge of his subject or said some really stupid things, we're going to say so. That's part of what the Paracast has always been. Whether it's been me or Chris or a previous co-host, when we have a show that didn't turn out the way we like, we don't make excuses for it. We tell you straight out we weren't happy. If the guest was a disappointment, like a certain Werner Bach, who could tell you?
We back engineer it, and we dive in there with everybody else.
As a matter of fact, I remember one of our previous co-hosts, he once put up a note on the Paracast forum saying, "This show is so bad, don't listen to it." Maybe that was going a bit too far. We'd like to say, listen to the show and come to your own conclusions. I have a suspicion that particular episode in question got far more listeners because listeners were told not to listen.
A little reverse psychology.
It's something like that. It's like, I guess there are other shows out there, rival shows, who say don't listen to the Paracast for one reason or another. But we don't go on there and say don't listen to a show. Yes, we'll rag on Coast to Coast AM because it's the number one show in the field, and it's because it has a number of failings that we'll criticize them for. But we don't say don't listen to them. We're in no position to say that. Listen to whatever show you want. Or don't listen to whatever show you want. And if you don't like what we do, don't listen. If you like what we do, we'll hope you will continue to listen. There you go. Meantime, you're working on a new book, Chris, called Stalking the Herd, right?
Correct.
I remember the title.
Very good.
You've been doing a lot of investigations of cattle deaths and mutilations. Anything new in that area?
Yeah, it's amazing how some subjects in the paranormal, if you want to call cattle mutilations paranormal, I think the more I get into it, the less paranormal it appears to me. But a lot of subjects in this realm ebb and flow, and the whole idea of livestock deaths, unexplained livestock deaths, have been around since the late 60s, and interest in it tends to ebb and flow. And for some reason, Gene, we've seen a real uptick in interest with the media in this subject, and I've been contacted here in the last week or so by a number of programs in Canada, the UK, the US, who are interested in doing segments on this particular quote-unquote mystery. And I find it intriguing that, for months and months, nobody professed any sort of interest, and then in a single day, I got all these phone calls. If I was Ken Thomas, maybe I'd be scratching my head going,
Well, I hear you scratching your head. What's that noise? Is that a scratch? Let's see. Hold on. Let me scratch. Do you hear that? Not really. It just sounds like silly microphone noise stuff. How's this work? Listen. Right. Did you hear that?
Ooh, it feels good. A little higher.
A little higher? Wait a minute.
Yeah. Oh, right there. Thanks.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about psychic phenomena here. Chris is, 100 miles from me? And if I could scratch his head, and that's a real head scratcher, I'll tell you. Anyway, back to the herd. Well,
I've been posting a number of videos that I've taken over the years. People have been dogging me for years. Why don't you have your video up on YouTube? And quite frankly, there's very little quality footage of real cattle mutilation cases up on the web. And because I am gearing up to publish a book, which I would hope to be the definitive look at demystifying the mystery of cattle mutilations, which we can talk about. But I've gone ahead and I've been slowly putting up some YouTube videos that feature some of my more intriguing cases that I videotaped back in the 90s. And just to give listeners and viewers a sense of what it's like to be out in the field, working with ranchers, working with law enforcement, and documenting these very perplexing, head-scratching cases.
We're going to have to look for some really good sound effects, some head-scratching sound effects. So whenever we have a head-scratching case on the Paracast, ladies and gentlemen, we will have the head-scratching sound. I'll look for a good sound. We'll have to do that because I don't think what I do there, that doesn't sound like anything, does it? It sounds preposterous. I mean, even, for example, in old radio, when they had the sound of hoofbeats, it wasn't a real horse, was it? Tell us about our guest for today. Fascinating stuff.
Oh, boy. I am really looking forward to today's Paracast episode. Richard Smoley is a graduate of Harvard and Oxford, and he is an extremely gifted writer, number one. He was an editor for Gnosis magazine for quite a number of years, and he's written a book called Supernatural, and I'm telling you, Gene, this is going to be sitting by my bedside, slowly getting annotated with little sticky notes and underlines. This is really good stuff. This is one of the more gifted writers, I think, that the Paracast has ever featured on the show, and I'm really looking forward to getting his take on, as he calls it, the supernatural, writings on an unknown history. And this is right down the Paracast alley.
Richard Smoley, author of Supernatural, coming up next on
the Paracast.
This has got to be familiar if you live in a certain part of the country right now. Horrible weather can severely affect your ability to get to the office. Road closures, major traffic jams. But just because you can't make it into the office doesn't mean business stops. That's why I highly recommend Go to My PC by Citrix. You can access your entire office computer from your home, so you don't have to risk a dangerous commute or worry about falling short on a project. You know, I love my copy of Go to My PC. It's my lifeline to my work computer from home. But our listeners can also try Go to My PC for 30 days. Visit gotomypc.com. Click the Try It Free button. Enter the promo code PODCAST. Then download the free app to your mobile device. That's gotomypc.com. Try it free. The promo code, ladies and gentlemen, is PODCAST.
Gold. It's like nothing else on Earth. From the Romans through the Renaissance, from the Industrial Age to the Space Age, gold has weathered the test of time. For 6,000 years, gold has remained the ultimate store of wealth. According to the World Gold Council and the U.S. Mint, demand is at an all-time high. The stage is being set for the reemergence of gold as the common-sense alternative to a fiat paper currency that gets weaker every day. Midas Resources is proud to offer the hard-hitting report that arms you with the truth you need to protect you and your family from the Fed's plans for your hard-earned money. Don't gamble with your future. Call Midas Resources today and ask for your free copy of As Good as Gold. Call 1-800-686-2237 for the report the Fed hopes you'll never see. As Good as Gold can be yours by calling 800-686-2237. If you have ever thought about owning gold, you must read this report. Call Midas today at 800-686-2237.
Radio advertising on GCN, the Genesis Communications Network, is simple, affordable, and reaches millions. How do we do it? Let's break it down. First, the simple part. You tell us about your business. Then our expert radio copywriters write your copy. We hire professional voice talent.
Hello there. I'm a professional announcer.
And then produce your ad with just the right music and feel. Voila! Simple. How affordable? 60-second ads on GCN are the most affordable national radio advertising rates, period. And that brings us to reach. Millions of people listen to GCN radio programs on over 700 AM and FM and XM stations and streaming audio live. That's it. A one-stop shop. Creative radio ads. Very affordable rates. Millions of potential customers and customer service that can't be beat. See our current list of satisfied advertisers at GCNlive.com. Then shoot us an email, advertise@gcnlive.com. you've come to expect winter specials from Herbal Healer Academy, and we're not going to let you down. Battle through cold and flu season with powerful, natural, and safe flu fighters. Antivirals like olive leaf extract capsules and elderberry power. Vitamin D3, 180 caps, only $9. Beta-glucans and an incredible immune system booster. Our own 4-herb tea capsules and Respa 8, all specially priced during the winter sale at herbalhealer.com. Also, exclusive homeopathic detoxes for lungs, kidneys, liver, whole body, and lymph are on sale. Herbal Healer Academy offers correspondence courses to teach you how to handle your health naturally. And as always, new customers get a free 128-page catalog with your order. Log on and save big now when you hit the winter specials at herbalhealer.com. Healing the world with nature, one person at a time since 1988. Celebrating 25 years in service to the natural healthcare industry.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
Richard Smalley, author of Supernatural, joins us on the Paracast this week. The subtitle of the book is Writings on Unknown History, and it's a collection of papers that you did, Richard. Welcome to the show. And I think the cool thing to ask first is focusing so much of your life on occult or esoteric studies. Mm-hmm. How did that come about? Any personal experience involved, or just your interest flew that way?
Well, I can't say that there have been any really mind-shattering experiences or any that would really stand out in kind of a conversion experience type way. But I have always had this sense of something deeper going on than conventional reality would like to admit. I've had an enormous appetite for this ever since I was young. And I've investigated some of these areas both, in an intellectual way and in a experiential way. So I have something to say about it.
Have you had any personal experiences that you thought were just real unusual? Yeah.
And this, in a way, one that comes to mind gives a good example of some of the things that I guess would like to say about the paranormal. About 21 years ago, I was doing a story on Native American spirituality, and I went to spend a few days with a medicine man up in Nevada, or out in Nevada, or the preposition is. And when I was leaving, he had one of his people give me kind of a traditional blessing for my car on with tobacco, offering to the 6 directions, which is a pretty standard Native American practice. And I thought, well, this was all very nice. But I had a very weird experience while coming back, and this was in Nevada. I was living in California at the time, and I was going home over the Donner Summit in California. This was not a terribly late in the season. It was like in late September. I was in the fast lane, and right behind me, pulling up right behind me, was this red sports car. I thought, well, God, this is obnoxious. So I'll just get out of his way. That's that. So I did. I pulled into the slow lane, and the minute I did, a freak storm appeared, a freak snowstorm, which made the road very, very slippery. And right before my eyes, or behind my eyes, I saw that sports car go right through a metal rail down a very, very deep crevice. And, I thought, well, is this paranormal in some sort of really occult sense? Well, not really. There's nothing there that happened that, defies the laws of nature as such. This could happen to anybody, but I thought it was very, very curious, and that I'd had it right after going this experience with this medicine man led me to think about it and to think there might be some connection. So I guess one thing I would say about paranormal experiences in general is they often take that form. They're not necessarily ghost apparitions. They're not necessarily UFO sightings, although people have those, as you know. But something kind of funny happens. And you can never really quite place your finger on it, even though the logical facts kind of break down and, well, there was a storm and there's storms over the Donner Summit and, I was lucky enough to slow down and that kind of thing. But it was curious to have that after that, blessing by the medicine man's assistant.
That sounds rather synchronistic.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, it was very, very peculiar. And this particular medicine man, whose name was Rolling Thunder, I mean, he's now deceased, but he was quite well known. And
you mean as in Rolling Thunder Review and the Bob Dylan tour in '76?
Yeah, that was named after him. And he was friendly with a lot of rock stars, particularly in the '70s. But he was also known for having certain power over controlling the weather. Now, I had no reason to believe he called up that storm or anything like that. But it was, as you say, synchronistic. It had a certain kind of oddness about it that, led me to think, well, I guess the real conclusion I got was, you're dealing with someone here who actually has real power, so don't do anything stupid or write anything stupid about him.
Now, Rolling Thunder, wasn't he, was Lakota, correct?
No, he was part Cherokee.
Cherokee, okay, a little south.
He was more,
and east.
he did live in Nevada, at the time. He lived in Nevada for a long time, and died, I think in the 90s. A new book has just come out about him, but, I don't remember the exact date.
So have you done much investigation and research into Native American spirituality and their particular interesting insights into what the rest of us would call sort of paranormal or supernatural sort of forces, energies, practices?
A little bit. It's certainly not an area that I'm an expert on, but I've looked into it a little. And one thing I guess I would say is that there's this very strong sense in the psychologist C.G. Jung noted this, that there is, in a sense, kind of a spirit of place that all of us share. He wrote a curious essay called The Complications of American Psychology, in which, essentially, he was over here. He said he saw kind of Native American characteristics in, many people who are obviously not ethnically from that background. It's an interesting area because I think it's an area where kind of the dominant, majority culture needs to sort of figure out where exactly, how do we fit in with the land? We're not like Europeans, like the British. The British have been there for thousands and thousands of years. They really go back to prehistory despite various conquests and whatnot. And, although not everybody is like really into that stuff over there, you do get a sense of much greater integration with the landscape than you do among Americans. Particularly people whose families have only been here like a few generations.
So, do you think that might tie into why the UK is considered one of the more haunted places on the planet? I seem to have read some pretty interesting sort of analogies of haunting sites and how England seems to be just rife with them. They're per capita. I think there's more haunted sites in England than any other place in the Western world. Do you think this tradition of being there for so many years lends itself to possibly layering these types of phenomenal effects and events and occurrences onto the populace as they progress through time?
Richard's answer will come in a moment. We have Richard Smalley, author of Supernatural, Writings on an Unknown History. He'll answer Chris's question. You're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hey neighbors, got a small business or a large company that needs to be online 24/7? Well, here's the little secret. To make sure your site is always online, you need world-class DNS service from Dyn. That's D-Y-N. For years, Dyn has been helping companies ranging from the scrappy young startup to the giant media moguls of the world with making sure websites are fast and always available, and that your emails are getting delivered. DYN. Get faster internet by using Dyn for DNS. Visit dyn.com/podcast30. Fill out the contact form or start shopping right away and save 30% by using the promo code podcast30 at checkout. Again, visit dyn.com, that's dyn.com/podcast30. Check them out today.
It's time for a home security quiz. Answer this. What effective home security device is smaller than a coffee cup, fakes out burglars into thinking someone is home at your house while you're away, plugs into any wall outlet, is recommended by many police departments, and sells for less than $35? Yes, it's Fake TV. This year, about 1 in every 50 U.S. homes will have a break-in, with burglars usually picking the easy target, a dark house that looks like no one is home. Fake TV is a small electronic security device that makes it look like someone is home watching TV by simulating the light from a real TV. It's like a lamp on a timer, but far more convincing. And for only $34.95, Fake TV could be the difference between coming home to a secure house or one that's been ransacked. Go to faketv.com or call 1-877-5-FAKE-TV. That's 877-532-5388 or go to faketv.com. Fake TV, the burglar deterrent.
Lunch is ready!
And it's an MRE smorgasbord at longlifefood.com. In 1983, Long Life Food Depot was one of the first to sell MRE pouches to the public, and we're still selling them almost 30 years later. Today, Long Life Food Depot has the world's most complete MRE online buffet, because MREs are all we do. Tasty varieties of chicken, beef, salmon, and pasta entrees, plus sandwiches and our easy-to-use pouches. Full moisture, long shelf life, and ready to eat hot or cold. We sell by the pouch or case, so the choices are endless, and so are the graduated quantity discounts. The more you buy, the more you save. Call 800-601-2833 or go to longlifefood.com to join our email list for upcoming announcements like the Rollaway Food Pod. Plus, enjoy fast and free shipping. Just call 800-601-2833 or visit longlifefood.com. Emergency preparedness, emergency relief. longlifefood.com since 1983, sending real food to your real future.
Hello?
Congratulations.
For what?
For losing all that weight. How'd you do it so fast?
ASAP.
ASAP what? What's that mean?
Are you ready to get as skinny as possible, as soon as possible, as simple as possible, and as sexy as possible?
I'm listening.
Then get with the ASAP program. It's real and it works. No smooth talk, no slick advertising, and no exaggerated claims of success.
I've got to know more.
Welcome to ASAP, as slim as possible. Whether you have 10, 20, or 50 pounds to lose, ASAP is your weight loss answer. ASAP targets the abnormal fat reserves and makes them available to be burned as fuel and contains no caffeine or hormones. Order ASAP at wholesale prices or join the team to share the business with others. Visit GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. Lose weight and look great with ASAP, as slim as possible.
This is Jacques Vallée. You're listening to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, we're proud to be talking to Richard Smalley. He's author of Supernatural. It is a classy book. It reads classy and it looks classy. And Chris asked a question about the greater prevalence of unusual events, say hauntings, in the UK. Richard?
Yeah, I lived in the UK for a couple of years as a student. That was my impression, that there was a great deal more of that, and there's a great deal more lore about it. I think one reason, in a sense, kind of practical, is that the houses are much older. For us, an old house is, a house that's 100 years old. In Britain, an old house.
Yeah, that was just built yesterday.
Right, yeah. An old house, someone might, well be living in a house that was built in the time of Henry VIII or something like that. And,
yeah, here, by the way, if you move into a house that old, it falls apart next week. It's so different.
Well, there's always that problem, too. I'm not big on maintenance myself, so I might not be the ideal person to have a house like that. But I think, if something has been inhabited for, 400 years or so, there's a lot more that's gone on. There are a lot more deaths that have happened there. There are a lot more people who've gone through it, a lot more people who are likely to have left some kind of psychic mark or residue on it. So I think that, is definitely part of the scene over there. And certainly not every old house is haunted, but, you certainly hear a lot more stories about it. A friend of mine I think his father's family originally came from the Dublin area, told me about staying at this old house and having this old man come into his room one night who I guess was deceased.
Well, that brings up to mind China, India, parts of Africa, where you have very, very ancient dwellings that have been continuously inhabited for many generations. Do you see kind of a correlation between the actual proximity and age of a dwelling and the amount of people that have cycled through there as perhaps lending itself to more of a prevalence of potential haunting or residual type psychic effects?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, what are the most haunted parts of the U.S., or, what are at least thought to be the most haunted parts of the U.S.? Well, probably New England is high up there, and New England, where I'm from, has its own rather special, sometimes spooky feel of its own. And I guess the other place I would say that has a lot is the South. And, those are both parts of the U.S. that have been inhabited the longest. Not by European standards. It's still not very, 400 years, not very long, but, for us it's a long time. So yeah, I think that's, and in China and India, and this is a subject I'm interested in. I think one has to also take into account, and there aren't really words to describe this, but kind of the culture has its own psychic landscape. And in a curious sort of way, the beliefs, the practices of culture create a certain kind of landscape where things are more likely to happen. The spirituality of India is quite a different place. And, a lot of events that we would consider very paranormal are, regarded, in a fairly matter-of-fact way. And I have to say that part of the reason for that must be that, the culture just accepts it so well. Whereas here, I mean, everybody, you have to at least pay lip service to skepticism, right? You have to, if you don't kind of pretend to be skeptical, people just think you're kind of credulous.
Boy, you should visit the Paracast forum sometime. That's an understatement.
And there's this, and skepticism about the paranormal has become kind of a quasi-religion in its own right, as you know. And a lot of the so-called skeptics are, they're true believers as much as, any devotee of any religion is.
Here. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah, I mean, you follow this field, so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So collective belief is a very powerful thing, and I don't think it's very well understood. And I don't think it's been very well studied. I read a fascinating book a couple of years ago. It was by a Russian named Bekhterev. It was a psychologist in the early 20th century who the book was entitled Collective Reflexology, and it was a study of how moods and impulses passed between crowds. And he sort of thought that there was almost like kind of like an electrical impulse that, could just pass through a crowd. Now, he lived through the Russian Revolution, and a lot of the anecdotes he describes of this Russian Revolution where, people just suddenly kind of went crazy and killed somebody for no apparent reason. So he had a lot of material to study. But I think we have to be a lot more serious in at least recognizing that collective belief, has a real role to play in how we perceive reality and what we perceive reality to be.
So would you be saying then that the collective belief may in and of itself create some of that reality?
Yeah, I think so. And
with 2012 and the Kali Yuga, I mean, these are two chapters in your book that I found very fascinating. Mm-hmm. With all this media hype about this 2012 and the end of the Mayan calendar, there's 19 calendars and none of them end. I digress. But where do we see a manifestation of this kind of riptide of belief surrounding 2012? What are your views on that?
Well, I think the 2012 phenomenon is very interesting in a way that's often been overlooked. Now, in the West, particularly since Christianity triumphed, there's always been this very strong apocalyptic impulse. That is to say, this impulse to believe that the end of the world is at hand. There's even a website somewhere that kind of lists every year that someone predicted would be the end of the world. There are a lot of years in the last 2,000 years.
Pages and pages and pages.
Maybe not every year, but pretty close to it. So there's this collective expectation of, apocalypse. I mean, you can see, the tabloids play on it, the kind of the more sensationalistic tabloids play on it. And it's very, very deeply ingrained in, the way Western people think. Now, at the same time, the culture itself has been detaching itself from Christianity much more than it was even a generation ago. There's, more people who identify themselves as non-affiliated. There's, religious belief, spiritual belief may be as strong as ever, but it's certainly less and less linked to any kind of institutional or dogmatic belief. So you have people who are, a kind of a cultural collective mindset that, has this real background in apocalypse and expectation of the end of the world, and kind of an increased kind of lack of interest in Christianity, which is the, chief language in which this has usually been formulated. So what I find interesting about the 2012 phenomenon is that, it is this kind of typical apocalyptic scenario. At least that's what it was turned into. But for the first time in Western history, the mythos behind it was not Christian or Judeo-Christian. It was from that of a native culture.
I'll tell you what, we'll go into more of Mayan mysteries and all sorts of unusual phenomena. We have Richard Smalley. The book is called Supernatural. And you have the supernatural Gene and the supernatural Chris. And it has nothing whatever to do with a TV show of a similar name. Because you're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to MrUFO@webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Are you still a traditional smoker? Now experience a new lifestyle and try vaping with e-cigarettes by LeSig. Imagine no ashes, stains, nasty smell, or coughing and hacking. With LeSig e-cigarettes' revolutionary microelectronic technology, rechargeable battery, and unique replaceable cartridge, you'll get all the benefits and satisfaction of smoking without the hazards. Choose your taste from a wide variety of our new American-made vape-free e-liquids at LeSig.com. And LeSig smokes the competition by serving thousands of worldwide customers with real people customer service, fast, free, same-day shipping, and a 30-day warranty and satisfaction guarantee. So are you ready for a new vaping lifestyle? Then call 870-518-4307. That's 870-518-4307. Or visit LeSig.com, spelled LECIG.com. LeSig e-cigarettes for today's modern smoker.
Is there a less expensive way to detoxify your body?
Yes, microplant powder from hempusa.org frees your body of toxins from vaccinations, pharmaceutical residues, heavy metals, parasites, and toxic chemicals in your food and water for around $10 a month. Microplant powder removes virus, fungus, and bacteria while cleaning and purifying the blood, lungs, stomach, and colon. It unclogs arteries and softens heart valves. Plus, microplant powder can be taken with any liquid, any pharmaceutical at any time. It's truly the easiest and most cost-effective way to clean and detoxify your body for around $10 a month. Microplant powder from hempusa.org. It really works. And for persistent health issues, try our Matrix Bio Powder together with microplant powder for a deeper cellular cleaning. Call 888-910-4367. That's 888-910-4367 and see what our powder, seeds, and oil can do for you at hempusa.org.
You've heard about or even used colloidal silver for years. But did you know there's a silver product that is much better, faster, safer, and superior? Silver that is fundamentally distinctive, different, and the only patented silver since the original colloidal silver in 1923? Introducing Silver Protocol from Neoferra. Think about this. What will you do when you can't get antibiotics? Silver Protocol should be in every grab bag, the one product you gotta have when it all breaks loose. Unlike colloidal silver, use Silver Protocol preventatively or whenever infection occurs. Silver Protocol can be boiled or frozen, yet is still 100% effective, has super long shelf life, and will not cause argyria or turn you blue. Order Silver Protocol at 800-213-0644. That's 800-213-0644. Or go to neofera.com, spelled Neofera.com. Sign up for our free educational email series at neofera.com. Silver Protocol, the ultimate immune booster.
Hi, this is Don Ecker, and you are tuned in to the Paracast. Let me tell you what, you're going to hear stuff here that you probably won't hear anywhere else. Hear that, George Snorri?
Richard Smalley, author of Supernatural, joins Gene and Chris. They're on the Paracast, and we were looking, I guess, here at collective realities. And maybe I go back to what Carl Jung said in the 50s when he wrote his book about UFOs. Mm-hmm. The modern myth of things seen in the sky, etc., etc. Whether if enough people believe in ghosts or UFOs, they shall come. Are we focusing on that a little bit?
Yeah, or at least people are going to experience them. I mean, to take another example, I remember reading a description of, a witch trial from, I don't know, maybe 1600 or so, several years ago. And this man testifying in court, because this was a real trial, real legal procedure, testified, to the jury that he had turned himself into a toad. And, the jury and the judge took him at his word. This was like, serious, factual, procedure. This was
right, and they frog walked him to the burning stake.
Yeah, well, that's it. I'm sure they did, but the thing about it is that at that point, the view of reality was such that, you could turn yourself into a frog or a toad, and do some good or evil that way. People believed it. and no one questioned it as a piece of factual testimony. Whereas if someone, said that today, then, they would get off on an insanity plea, right?
Well, no, they'd accuse him of actually licking Bufo valerius, the DMT toad.
Right. Yeah, that's one psychedelic drug that hasn't really gotten incredibly popular over here. I don't know if that's due to come or not, but
yeah, when in doubt, lick the toad.
Well, if it's on enough reality shows, people will embrace it.
Right. Yeah, and that's that there's a lot of reality shows and a lot of kind of mass interest in the paranormal is in a way there's like there's a universal kind of I would say human need to believe that there's more to reality than what an 8th grade science textbook is going to tell you.
No, I'm not sure. I think the younger generation, we're talking jaded. It doesn't matter what sort of belief system you come up with, they're going to have some sort of comeback and some jaded sort of cynical response that is going to, put a humorous spin on it, but negate it at the same time. I think at least in this country, we're seeing a trend towards the opposite, where people are so jaded, they're so overwhelmed by the media and all these subjects that just don't really grip younger people. I think we're seeing some sort of like sway to the opposite end of the spectrum.
Oh, that could be. You could say a lot of things about youth culture, and I wouldn't be able to really say, whether you're right or wrong. My experience of youth culture, kind of came from teaching at a community college for a few years, in Massachusetts, but, even that's been a while back. I think there's this jadedness, but there's still, an enormous amount of belief in things like the afterlife, belief in God. If you believe the polls, 90% of people believe in God or at least some sort of supreme being or some sort of higher power. One thing that's always fascinated me is when they do polls on belief in reincarnation. And I've seen a number of these, that have been conducted over the last couple of decades, and they're pretty consistent. The numbers always seem to end up someplace between 21 and 28% of the U.S. population that believes in reincarnation. How many of these are young people and how many are older people, I don't really know. But there is still, a lot of belief in these things. One of the things I found fascinating about one of those, it was a Harris poll I remember from 2007 that said that indeed 21% of Americans believed in reincarnation, and 25% of American Catholics believed in it. Which was kind of curious, given that there are more Catholics who believe in reincarnation than in the population as a whole, even though their own church has always taught against it. So what's going on there? I think one thing is that people at least like to think of themselves as very independent-minded, and just because the church says so, doesn't mean they're going to buy it. And that I think, is one element of the jadedness and, skepticism I think that you're talking about. But I think there's still, an enormous appetite for belief in that sort of thing. The most obvious, one, and I'm sure you've dealt with this on your show is, the fascination with the near-death experience. There's so many near-death experiences, so many, bestsellers out about near-death experiences. There's a real appetite for it, and that's there's some jadedness about it, but there's still a lot of real interest and desire to know, not necessarily to believe, but to know, that there are other realities beyond, the ones that we normally take for granted.
Yeah, absolutely. We had PMH Atwater as one of our guests here a couple of months back, and We had a fascinating discussion about the whole subject of near-death experiences. But in your book, The Dice Game of Shiva, one of the things that I was really struck by is that you showed that consciousness is not just a mere side effect of neural processes, but it somehow is tied into how the universe actually functions. There's some sort of like mechanistic connection there. How does belief and an actual the process of consciousness, where do we see that sort of combining together in a collective sense?
That's a pretty intricate question. I mean, the Dice Game of Shiva is the previous book I wrote. It was published in 2009, and it was a study of consciousness. And basically what I was trying to say in that book is that I define consciousness, which a lot of books on consciousness don't do, as the capacity to relate self and other. And this is true kind of in all ways and at all levels. So that consciousness is just not, as you say, kind of an epiphenomenon of the brain that's limited to humans, and therefore kind of like this weird aberration. But it's present in all things in some form or another. In that book, I quoted an interview with Edison, who said, all of these chemicals are able to interact with each other, in all these marvelous ways. Do you mean to say they do that without some kind of consciousness? That is to say, it's not saying like, they have conscious will in the way that we do, but at some level, in some way, a hydrogen atom has to know how to recognize an oxygen atom and react with it in a certain way in certain circumstances to produce water. The way I'm seeing it, so that consciousness, is organic to everything. And our consciousness is only a very, very, very small slice of that. Even supposedly inanimate things do possess consciousness in a way. We all know plants have, certain types of consciousness, the book The Secret Life of Plants. So that's the answer to that part of the question. But I think you're also asking about,
in training, consciousness in training other aspects of consciousness together into some sort of kind of a formula where it's like a self-creating and self-fulfilling prophecy. Going back to the top of our particular conversation here about 2012 and the power of belief and collective, the collective consciousness actually manifesting something just out of pure belief and focusing, collectively on something to such an extent that you actually, manifest that which you're obsessing with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is a question that we'll pursue in our next segment, because we have another kind of collective unconscious to explore right now. The collective unconscious of all our sponsors working together to convince you to buy their products or services so we could stay on the air. Isn't that good?
That was good, Gene.
I know. I'm going to patent that and we can sell it next week. The book is Supernatural from Richard Smalley. With Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. We the people grow cotton, weave fabric, engrave ink, embed strips and fibers to protect from counterfeit, then carting to a private bank, having it lent back at interest, forcing taxes to service debt. This capitalism, or was Jefferson correct when stating a central bank issuing the public currency is a greater menace to the liberties of the people than a standing army? Ted Anderson, I'm placing a free silver dollar in a book that explains our monetary system. Call for your copy, 800-686-2237. It's time to understand the system. Call 800-686-2237. That's 800-686-2237.
Can Heart and Body Extract help with other ailments besides heart conditions, high blood pressure, clogged arteries, or unbalanced cholesterol? It did for Karen.
I've been using Heart and Body Extract for approximately 2 weeks. I've had an earwax buildup problem for many years, with over-the-counter stuff not working at all. I had very poor hearing due to this earwax buildup. Well, after 2 weeks of taking Heart and Body Extract, my earwax buildup almost completely cleared up. Could this be the effect of better body circulation?
Heart and Body Extract is an effective 100% organic nutritional supplement specially formulated to allow your body to heal itself.
My hearing is almost completely back to normal. I'm amazed.
Order by calling 866-295-5305 or online at hbextract.com. That's 866-295-5305 or hbextract.com. Heart and Body Extract for a long and healthy life.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
We continue with our second hour of the Paracast with Richard Smalley. The book is called Supernatural, and we've been focusing on long questions and answers, I guess, about the nature of reality and whether we create our own reality. But then we get to the larger question, Richard, what if we have the Matrix reality where maybe we're all asleep somewhere and some massive computer system is directing our every action or expectation?
Well, the answer to that, in a way is...
I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. Well, in a sense, it's kind of the answer that Descartes gave, because he asked, that very question in the 17th century, and he said, "Well, how do I know I'm not being deluded, my entire life by some cruel demon?" And it's a very Matrix-like question.
Descartes got his initial impetus, I think, as he was marching from Spain to Bohemia as part of the army, and he was told that by an angel that came to him in a vision or a dream that the answer was in what, the measurement and number or something. Correct me if I'm wrong there.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact details, but the story does go something like that. But in a sense, what I'm talking about here is simply that Descartes saying, well, if I don't know anything else, and I may not know anything else, at least I know I'm experiencing something. There's something to having this experience. And, he took that in his own kind of philosophical direction. But, I think that basic stance, makes sense. Yeah, I think, therefore I am, or I experience, therefore I am.
Well, and the converse is true, too. You think, therefore you are.
Right. So, I think there's that element in it. He had his own interpretation, which I'm not going to necessarily go into because I don't necessarily agree with all of it. But you may not know whether the reality you experience is actual, but at least you still know that there's kind of a you having it, whatever this you is. It gets funny, of course, because, if you believe a lot of particularly Eastern, but not only Eastern philosophies, it turns out that they would say that the you that's having this experience is, the kind of the core of the delusion, which is, it's an interesting subject to explore. I don't necessarily agree with it myself, but there's some people have taken it in that direction. That that we are being deluded by this cruel demon, and it's our kind of personal egos.
Well, then how would you explain moments of gnosis?
Well, I guess the way that you explain it would be that if this kind of experience is delusory, we must have at least some capacity for experiencing reality and truth. And those moments of gnosis would then be, some of those moments of truth that somehow permeate through the layers of the matrix.
Right, the software program.
Right.
Of course, we wonder what happens to the software program when it develops bugs or is infected by malware.
Yeah.
Or maybe that's the problem. The other thing, of course, about reality is whether we are all just somebody's video game.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the answer to kind of a lot of that is, even if it's true, it's kind of a hard thing to go around believing in your day-to-day life. And, the thing about a lot of skeptics is these questions are interesting to, answer. I can doubt, the existence of everyday reality, but in practice, I'm going to act as if it still exists. And, that's really the only way to do it. Because otherwise, therein lies madness.
Right. A slap in the face and a kick in the tail end hurts.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Those have been, some of the kind of refutations of it that have been made. Now, there are lots of other things going on as well, which is, it could be that, the fact that a slap and a kick hurt, is itself kind of, an organic part of the delusion. One could go and look at that point of view. From my own perspective, to kind of, put this in some kind of perspective, I think these questions are interesting to look at and to think about, not necessarily because they're going to lead you in some, wildly new direction of belief, about your universe or about your life, but, they stretch your mind, and they at least ask you to accommodate certain possibilities that most people don't want to take for granted. Even most educated, supposedly thoughtful people don't take for granted.
One thing that was struck me in your book, and probably the shortest chapter, which is chapter 10, called Hidden Masters.
Mm-hmm.
In your opinion, what is the operative inspiration that creates a Buddha or a Christ type figure or a Lao Tzu or one of any of a number of what are now considered masters?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think separates their process from the average person's process, and what are the aspects of their separation that make them stick down through history?
Well, that's a good question. Well, I think one thing is that they, what they tended to have in common is that they've all expanded human consciousness and awareness in new and different ways that were needed at the time. We kind of tend to, for us, love is a cliche, at this point, as we remember as Valentine's Day approaches. But all you need is love. You can go through as many songs as I can, on this whole theme. But really, it was Christianity that brought love to the fore. No one really talked about love as kind of the central thing in the universe before Christianity. And that was, probably Christ's contribution, that, he kind of intuited, that love is a much more important force in the universe than it had been given credit for. Even if a lot of, the ethical teachings that he gave were, not totally unlike those that, other religions and other traditions gave as well. So I think that possibility of opening minds and just totally new directions is an extremely important part of it. Then there's this question what constitutes something that's, a being who's, shall we say, superhuman? is a superhuman being one who's kind of superhuman in functioning? That is to say, someone who can, materialize at will and so on. Possibly, and there are stories of that, and I have to say I've never had any experience like that, so I don't know. I'm not really all that interested in dismissing it out of hand.
Like the 7 labors of Hercules.
Right. But another aspect of these kind of superior individuals, that we do sometimes see, is a much higher ethical level than the normal person normally displays, and that, what actually happened to the crucifixion of Christ and so on is, a subject for, hours and hours of radio shows. But
on this show, we have to do a break, and then we'll get into more of this. Maybe that's why we like our superheroes like Superman.
Right.
And by the way, if you have a comment or a question about the Paracast, we'd love to hear from you. You can write us news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. Or send us a tweet. We're known on Twitter as the Paracast. We have Richard Smalley joining Gene and Chris in the Paracast.
Attack of the Rockoids has been well received by critics and readers alike. It's a thrill-a-minute story you'll never forget. A former U.S. military intelligence officer is haunted by intense dreams about a beautiful woman pleading for his help after a terrible battle in outer space. But the dreams turn out to be true and thrust him into a telepathic love affair with a woman whose faraway planet is intent on destroying the Earth. And now the gripping tale continues in The Coming of the Protectors. It's the second book of the Rockoids trilogy, a galaxy-spanning adventure that pits our hapless heroes against powerful, fanatical enemies that threaten the lives of freedom-loving beings everywhere. Attack of the Rockoids and The Coming of the Protectors, classic science fiction at its best, available now. For more details, visit rockoids.com. That's ROCKOIDS.com.
Quantitative easing, unemployment at depression levels, Europe financial system falling apart, China getting out of U.S. treasuries. At the end of 2008, the time of TARP, the national debt was at $11 trillion, gold trading around $850 per ounce. Close to 2012, the national debt exceeded $16.4 trillion, gold doubled to $1,600 per ounce. The $20 trillion threshold for the national debt is inevitable. Politicians in Washington have a ferocious appetite for spending and stimulus. What's worse, a printing press to finance. 100 years ago, we had a gold standard to limit this madness, but now you have to adopt your own gold standard. Don't be fooled with paper promises. Get Midas Resources 10 Reasons to Buy Gold free by calling 800-686-2237. Understanding the gold and silver market may be the only insurance you could have to avoiding the next economic crisis. Call 1-800-686-2237 and order your free copy. Again, that's 800-686-2237.
We all know that Berkey Water Purification Systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey Water Filtration Systems. The Berkey Light Systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light System today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
Fight back this cold and flu season with the world's best garlic extract, Ali C. Why Ali C? Because it helps your body fight viruses, bacteria, and fungi. Ali C has been scientifically proven in double-blind studies using low doses to greatly reduce the number, severity, and duration of common colds. Ali C contains 300 milligrams of stabilized allicin, the active ingredient in crushed garlic.
Studies show Ali C is effective against MRSA, bacterial, fungal, and viral infections. One tablet of Ali C has the equivalent of 40 cloves of garlic. Ali C supports your body's resistance to all types of conditions and can help lower high blood pressure and high cholesterol. So boost your body's resistance to infection with nature's best garlic extract, Ali C. For more information and to order Ali C, call 877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com. That's 1-877-888-7126 or go to garlichealthproducts.com for your Ali C today.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
With Gene and Chris on the Paracast, Chris O'Brien asked the question that the late Mayor Edward Koch asked. How am I doing? You're doing fine, my friend. The book is Supernatural from Richard Smalley, exploring the frontiers of reality. But it's almost a silly question, but I'll ask it anyway because I raise it. The fact that we so much love these superheroes who are so much better than we are. They have these powers, almost godlike. And if you look at the trailer for the new rendition of Superman called Man of Steel, they're trying to present him almost as a godlike figure, don't you think?
Yeah. And, it's a curious irony. Where did the notion of the Superman come from? Well, it actually comes from Nietzsche, the philosopher Nietzsche, and he said, God is dead, long live the Superman. That's almost like a verbatim quote of Nietzsche's. Now, I am fairly strongly convinced, for reasons that are too intricate to go in here, that, at least some of the people who were involved in designing Superman were at least aware of Nietzsche's ideas. And, this becomes like another topic in itself, like what extent do esoteric, mystical ideas permeate mass culture, and how do they get around to doing that? But, the other thing about Superman is kind of a semi-divine figure. And again, one of the things that makes him semi-divine, and that's kind of one of the points I was, making earlier, is not only his, capacity to, stop trains and, do all that sort of thing, but, his sort of superior ethical stance, that he's always fighting for, what used to be known as truth, justice, and the American way. And, this kind of ethical superiority, in a way, is as much part of the Superman mystique as the superpowers themselves.
Well, the one thing about Superman is he always had a higher ethical standard. But one thing started by,
wait a
for
minute,
example...
Gene. Hold on. When Superman came out, he was nothing more than a very artful, well-calculated propaganda tool during World War II.
Well, we understand how they would use him because of that. But the essence of Superman is he has a higher moral, ethical behavior because he comes from this advanced race of beings from Krypton.
So what is kryptonite?
That's the devil, I guess. But the one thing about it is that the later class of superheroes, which came from Stan Lee, for example, they were troubled, psychologically impacted by their superpowers, or just generally screwed up anyway. And through some accident or fate, they become superheroes, and that only makes them crazier and wackier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. A genre starts out. All genres start out kind of fairly simple and cartoon-like, and as people keep exploring the possibilities of them, they get both weirder and more sophisticated. And I think that's probably true with the whole superhero mythos.
But really interesting, I think, dovetails into an interesting subject. And you have a very interesting chapter in your book, Supernatural, about Atlantis. Mm-hmm. And I think in the New Age community, Atlantis has almost transcended into this realm of superheroes and exalted levels of technology and knowledge and some sort of connection to some sort of divine imperative. Why don't you explain to us your thinking about Atlantis, as you put it in your chapter heading, Atlantis Then and Now?
Okay. Well, Atlantis, first is kind of just a bit of history. Atlantis, the Atlantis myth was brought to us by Plato in a dialogue of his called the Timaeus, and he wrote another one called the Critias, which is sort of a follow-up. And in it, he claimed that the Greek sage Solon visited Egypt around 600 BC and was told by the priests there that, they basically said, you Greeks are just children. You have no sense of history at all. Our history goes back, thousands and thousands of years. And, part of the story was the myth of Atlantis, this continent that was in the, I guess Plato basically said it's by the Straits of Gibraltar, the Pillars of Heracles, as it was known in those days. And this continent, went through an incredible cataclysm and sank. And the year given, is translated into our terms, 9600 BC. Well, this is all kind of, this is all a bit improbable sounding, but it's starting to sound a little less improbable these days because, we're starting to, think of whole countries that may be submerged by rising ocean levels from global warming, like the Maldives Islands in the Indian Ocean. This is kind of like a modern day Atlantis waiting to happen. The sea levels rise, above a certain level. The Maldives Islands are going to be underwater. Interestingly enough, that date that Plato gives, 9600 BC, is actually pretty close to the end of the last ice age.
Correct.
And we know that at the end of the last ice age, a lot of bits of land that were formerly above water went underwater. So, there's even from a purely, totally straight scientific viewpoint, there's no reason to disbelieve in Atlantis, as such. It's not like paranormal phenomena or UFOs where you have to kind of, really stretch your view of reality to, even make sense of it. Here, no, this is according to, standard science, this is what happened. There's no reason a comparatively advanced civilization couldn't have existed that, was inundated. Plato's own account of it is very clearly allegorical in a lot of ways. He was into sacred geometry and that kind of thing, and a lot of his account, has a lot to do with that.
There was also issues of abuse of power and punishment. The end of the civilization occurred because of the Atlanteans not, maintaining that higher ideal.
Right. And, most of, at least the contemporary, myths of Atlantis, from, things like Theosophy from Edgar Cayce materials, and similar sources, say that the Atlanteans became, corrupt at a spiritual level, even using occult forces, for low or sinister ends.
We'll go into more of what happens in the fate of losing your spiritual grounding. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
Preparedness is simple when you have the right stuff. And with the looming threat of economic collapse and possible service interruption, it's time to get the best-in-class preparedness stuff at DisasterStuff.com. DisasterStuff.com has been serving smart preppers for over 15 years with quality products like Berkey water filters. DisasterStuff.com is the official Berkey in-stock shipping center. And as always, free shipping on all Berkey products. Stock up on water barrels and accessories. Get Country Living or Wonder Mill grain mills, Excalibur food dehydrators, Tatler reusable canning lids, Sun oven solar cookers, EMP bags to protect sensitive electronics. And don't be without your Life Straw personal water filter, all from DisasterStuff.com. Preparedness is simple with the right stuff from DisasterStuff.com. Freedom through self-reliance and personal responsibility.
Do you owe the IRS money that you can't pay? Are tax liens and levies ruining your life? Are you tired of being afraid just to go to the mailbox? If this describes you, then Dan Pilla can help.
Hi, I'm Dan Pilla, and I've been solving tax problems for more than 30 years. In fact, I wrote the book that made it possible to negotiate settlements with the IRS, and I've helped thousands of people do exactly that. Call now at 800-346-6829 to learn how I can help you. You know your IRS debt will not go away by itself, but you don't have to live in fear anymore. New changes to IRS policies will help more people than ever before eliminate their debts once and for all. There's no need for you to suffer another day with IRS debt. Call 800-346-6829. I can help you eliminate wage and bank levies, release tax liens, and negotiate a settlement with the IRS that will put your tax nightmare behind you forever. Call 800-34-NO-TAX or go to my website, taxhelponline.com. That's taxhelponline.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Extendovite is a 7-herb heart protection cocktail designed to support cardiovascular health, blood pressure, and cholesterol levels. February is Heart Month, and we at Heart Drop 2000 are having our Heart Month sale with prices from 6 years ago. Starting now until February 28th, you can purchase a 4-month supply of either capsules or liquid for only $125, including shipping and handling, to help you help yourself. So call now to take advantage of this one-time offer. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822. Or visit our website at heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
This is Leslie Kane, and I'm with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and you are listening to the Paracast.
Just parenthetically, Richard Smalley, author of Supernatural. Isn't that what they say about us now, that we're kind of losing our way, so much focus on technology that we don't focus so much on our spirituality? And maybe Atlantis, if that's what their failure was, if there was an Atlantis, that should be a teaching lesson to us?
I think it should be a lesson to us whether or not it ever happened to Atlantis. I mean, I think there's a serious danger of that. This kind of, hypnotic fascination with technology just kind of, I mean, at the very least, it's, this kind of huge distraction. I mean, people just, you just go around and everybody's just staring into their smartphones these days.
God, Richard, I'm even texting now. I mean, yeah. I swore I would never have my nose buried into my phone. And I'm telling you, I'm doing 20, 30 texts a day, and I'm not happy about it.
Well, I mean, it's useful. It can be useful. It's just that people start to do it, almost kind of by because they don't know what else to do, or like the teenage girl who's always on the cell phone, just to make it seem as if she's popular, that kind of thing.
What I see, by the way, nowadays, more and more people, the last 5 or 10 years. They walk around all day long. They've got their mobile phone in their ear, and they just can't stay away from it. They're doing a transaction, and they have to pay for something, but they're on the phone. Now, my problem is the other way, which is I'm not usually talking to somebody when I'm at the checkout counter, if that's when the phone rings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think, the danger there, with that technology is, is it spiritually corrupting? I don't know. I think cognitively, it's very distracting, and a lot of the kind of cognitive disorders we're seeing are the result of this kind of just increased dissociation. We're, doing too many things at a time.
Not to mention the side of the head brain cancer.
Right. Yeah, all that stuff too. But, people are just, doing too many things at once, your brain kind of gets dissociated as a result of doing that. I mean, I certainly do it. Most people do it. It's not so much an ethical judgment, but it's part of one of the concerns about our civilization today. Our awareness of our own surroundings, is often really just way in the background. And that, beyond a certain point, that can't be that good.
Well, do you see this progressing forward in kind of an obvious way towards some sort of, twisted transhumanism where humans become further and further disassociated from their humanity and become more robotic and sort of bought into the digital age? Or what do you think?
I think one thing that we always kind of have to remember is that, and prophecy and futurology, which are similar arts, are also things that are discussed in my book. We tend always to assume that the future is going to be kind of a continuation of the past. That is to say, any current trend is just going to continue on and on forever until it reaches some kind of extreme. And, circumstances don't really work that way. There are always these changes and disconnects and kind of radical shifts that nobody expected. So I don't see any reason why something like that can't occur. It goes without saying that if it's unexpected, that I among everybody else, not expecting it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We may suddenly someday everyone may just sort of say, this stuff is boring. Let's do something else with our time.
Right. Start a commune in southern Colorado.
Right.
One of the chapters that I was really quite fascinated by is chapter 3 in your book, Supernatural. Does prophecy work? Now we're looking forward here in time, and obviously throughout human history, there have been sages and prophets and people that have projected ahead. Nostradamus, you have a chapter on Nostradamus. Where do you come down on prophecy for our listeners? I was fascinated by this particular chapter, and I'd love for you to elucidate some of your thinking about that.
Well, as far as prophecy is concerned in general, I guess I tend to be fairly skeptical. Just because the record of prophecy just hasn't been that good. Going back to the apocalyptic, mentality that I was talking about at the beginning of the interview, Christianity, for example, really got its start because the first generation of Christians thought the end of the world was literally at hand. This just didn't happen. And Christianity ever since has been kind of like trying to figure out what to do as a result of that failure, usually by predicting that the end of the world is at hand now.
Reconciliation is not an option.
Right. Now, prophecy is interesting in a lot of ways. One thing is, what can you expect a prophet to say? Well, for the prophets of the type we're talking about, I mean, you have to expect, some kind of radical dislocation, some kind of great changes, because otherwise, who would care? If some kind of Nostradamus or Edgar Casey came out and said, well, things are just pretty much going to be the way they are for quite a while, this person might actually have a fairly good chance of being right. But who would be interested in it? Who would want to read that? There's no market for it. So the apocalyptic prophet, as I've been calling him, is very, very happy to predict all kinds of disasters and dislocations and, the moon turning to blood and so on. Contrast it to, the more mundane type of prophet, which you might call a futurologist.
Kurzweil.
Yeah. Now these guys, I mean, most of them have no particular occult bent. How do they predict the future? Well, they predict the future by, saying, well, if current trends continue, X and such is going to happen. But, as we know, current trends don't continue. I read a fascinating book a couple of years ago called The Year 2000 that was written in 1967. And, it was by Herman Kahn, who was kind of one of the great, real or imagined futurologists of the time. And, he got some things right. One thing he got right was that computers would be used for banking. But, he also predicted that, this kind of gradual the continuation and growth of the, what used to be called the welfare state. And, no, actually the welfare state is, whether you approve of it or not, the welfare state in not only in the U.S., but in most of the world is actually retrenched quite a bit. He was making his predictions, which were perfectly reasonable on the basis of what they knew at the time. By the way, there is nothing in that book, absolutely zero, about religion. And in those days, it was kind of generally assumed that religion was kind of this quaint survival from the past, and that, in this age when, we would be all, being in Mylar suits and flying around in spaceships like George Jetson, there would be no interest in religion.
Science has become kind of a replacement for outmoded religious structures and control system.
And by the way, now also technology. We believe our iPhones, we believe our iPads, and we believe our Macs, and maybe we believe our Samsung Galaxies or whatever. We have Richard Smully joining Gene and Chris here in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com. So here's what happened. I was placing an order online. the site went down. It just stopped responding. It took hours before it returned, but I'd already placed the order with another company. If your site goes down, you could lose business. And if you have a business or personal site, you'll want to know it's easy to run and it will stay online. At iWeb, your site is hosted on one of the most reliable networks in the world. Check it out. iWeb.com. That's iWeb.com.
You land in Buenos Aires, then are shuttled to Santa Rosa, where a nicely furnished cabin with all amenities, Wi-Fi, executive food and wine, and laundry service awaits. After a good night's sleep, your adventure begins. You're on a golden stag safari for big game. But it's not Africa, it's Argentina. One-on-one guided hunts for water buffalo, cougar, bighorn rams, wild boar, and the biggest stag deer in South America. All gold medal quality. All the action you can handle. Land Rovers, top rental guns with scopes, all food, beverages, hunting guides, ground transportation included, and more, all more affordable than you can imagine. The adventure of a lifetime starts at GoldenStagSafaris.com, the big game hunting ranch. GoldenStagSafaris.com.
What's better than Mountain House freeze-dried food? Buckets of Mountain House freeze-dried food. Now the freeze-dried guy introduces convenient, easy-to-store Mountain House survival buckets filled with our top-selling items. Each item is sealed in a Mylar-type pouch, and each pouch is neatly packed in clear buckets so you can easily see the contents inside. These Mountain House survival buckets come with well over a 25-year shelf life and are perfect for emergency preparedness, camping, backpacking, or at-home use. Go to freezedryguy.com, click on freeze-dried foods, and choose our 12-month, 6-month, 3-month, 1-month, or 7-day Mountain House survival bucket with 32 generous servings starting at just $69.95. And all orders to the lower 48 ship free. Call 866-404-3663 or go to freezedryguy.com. That's 866-404-3663 or go to freezedryguy.com. 100% veteran owned. The Freeze Dry Guy.
A little over a year ago, I began to do a lot of research into why, even if I had a pretty good-sized meal, that I was still starving. And my research led me to a well-known fact that most of the soils that we grow our crops on here in the United States and across the industrialized world are almost completely depleted of almost all of the key minerals and trace elements that our bodies need to rebuild themselves, fight off cancer, and be healthy. I then searched out the best vitamin and mineral company out there and discovered Youngevity. The Youngevity products are designed to give you the real nutrition you need, and once you've got that, you don't have to eat as much to be satisfied. I've lost 37 pounds in 2 months, simply getting the vitamins and minerals I need. Check it out for yourself. It's incredible. Go to InfoWarsTeam.com today and order your first canister of Beyond Tangy Tangerine Complete Multivitamin Mineral Complex Dietary Supplement. That's InfoWarsTeam.com.
This is Kurt Sutherland, the author of UFO Mysteries, and you're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris, the book under discussion is Supernatural, Writings on an Unknown History. We're trying to make sense of it all with Richard Smalley. Chris?
Yeah, we have, as is our custom, we have a number of questions from our participants at forum.theparacast.com. The first question, Richard, comes from Conrad Hartman, who has been posting for almost a year at the forum. This is an interesting one. I'd like to get your take on it. He asks, mortification of the flesh has occurred in various religions around the world. A number of Catholic saints, as well as other figures, including Pope John Paul II, that's news to me, practice self-flagellation among other acts. To what extent do these acts serve an ecstatic function? That is, in addition to serving as a gesture of humility, do these activities not also serve to drive the participants into trance states and ecstatic visionary experiences? Good question.
Yeah, I think there's something going on with that. I mean, just to view it in kind of very prosaic terms, it looks like, and I have no experience with this myself, certain mild types of flagellation can probably, stimulate the, the natural opiates in the brain, whatever they're called. I've forgotten what the name.
Well, dopamine and there's others. I mean, to me, let's lick the frog. I mean, that's way easier. But continue.
Yeah. So yeah, I think part of it is to generate ecstasy. I mean, look. I mean, there's another fact is that particularly in Catholicism, particularly in the last 400 years, there's a element. If you just look at the art, just look at it without any kind of preconception, without knowing what it is, there's this incredible sadomasochistic element in it. I don't think that was there way back when. The medieval people didn't generally portray Christ in, with kind of bleeding all over the place. And the Russian Orthodox, have very, very strict, the Greek Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox, I suppose I should say, very, very strict rules about how sacred art is to be made. Always forbade that kind of art on the grounds that it would kind of lead to base passions. So, I mean, you really have to ask yourself, what kind of sadomasochistic impulse is there in here? I don't know. I mean, I guess the classic, case for me is remember, you've certainly seen the movie Carrie.
Right, of course. Yeah, the famous Sissy Spacek became a star.
Right. And, for me, the creepiest thing in the whole movie was,
when they dumped a bucket of blood on her.
No, it wasn't. It was the mother and the weird Jesus crucifix she had in this closet in the house. She would walk Carrie into. That was much more.
Yeah, that was really creepy. Well, how about Los Hermanos de Penitentes, the penitent brothers of the Penitentes, who to this day in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico practice very almost Islamic sounding rituals of being naked and marching over cactus beds and flagellating themselves with cat o' nine tails, and in some possible stories actually crucify one of the most worthy brothers on Good Friday. I mean, we do still have, in the modern 21st century, we do still have sects of Christians that actually practice these very self-abusive rituals.
And as we all know from Dan Brown's Da Vinci Code, the Opus Dei is sometimes lumped in with that.
Not necessarily accurately, but...
Yeah, that's kind of controversial. But, self-flagellation, as you pointed out, if Pope has done it, it's always been, a part of Catholic practice. I mean, I think a number of things are going on. One is, I mean, you do have to ask yourself, what is the sadomasochism that's going on here? And, that's almost like a question for a clinical psychologist.
Maybe the head of the House in Congress.
Right. But I mean, there's another thing that, I think you can say, which is we all know that, when you get right down to it, there are times when you have to put a lid on your bodily impulses, whether it involves, sleeping with your best friend's wife or waiting till you get off the highway to go to the bathroom, that kind of thing. That's just part of what it is to be human. Now, it's very, very easy to take a step and jump to the conclusion, as a number of religions have done, that the flesh is innately evil and therefore ought to be punished. And I think that's what's going on with some of those, penitent, sects and that kind of thing.
Well, or any teenage boy and his girlfriend, Rosie Palm.
Yeah, right. I hadn't heard that one before. But, so, there's definitely a lot going on there. To follow up on the question a little bit more, there is Wicca, which is, as you know, sometimes said to be survival of the old pagan religion, sometimes said to be a modern invention. One of the most influential figures in Wicca was an Englishman named Gerald Gardner, who was apparently into flagellation and made it part of the Wiccan rituals. And whether this was really part of the Wiccan rituals as practiced way back when, or whether he had kind of gotten a taste for this in British public school, is a question that's occasionally still debated.
Well, I just should point out in passing that during the course of a time that my first wife and I edited a UFO paranormal magazine for a number of years, we came into contact with Wiccans over those years, and they never seemed to be the type of people who would do that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, there are about as many different types of Wiccans as there are Christians or anything else. So, it's certainly not, it would be true of what are called Gardnerian Wiccans, because Gerald Gardner was the guy I was talking about, but I certainly wouldn't, say that every Wiccan does that, or even that most
Yeah,
Wiccans
obviously. Richard, that leads me to another question from Conrad Hartman, one of our posters at forum.theparacast.com. To what extent do you feel that modern paganism is historically linked to pre-Christian practices? And do you feel that modern practices accurately follow these historical precedents?
Well, that's a really interesting question. I suppose I should really only plug one book at a time, but one of my previous books is called Hidden Wisdom, A Guide to the Western Inner Traditions, which has a whole chapter on that. And I'm not going to be able to go into the whole, detail of it here. It is a very good and very intricate question. I think there's evidence that the old religion survived in kind of family traditions and kind of out-of-the-way pockets. To what extent this reflects any kind of real practice of, what pagans were doing, in 500 AD, is considerably more open to question, because there just isn't a lot of data about it.
Yeah, it's impossible to really demonstrate any sort of connection. But here's my own sort of follow-up on that. Mm-hmm. You mentioned Aleister Crowley, of course. To people that don't know who he is, it's Crowley if you think of him foully, Crowley if you think he's possibly holy. That's kind of my axiom. But you mentioned
I never heard that one either.
Yeah, well, that was Crowley's own sort of a disclaimer. But Aleister Crowley, I think, is a seminal figure of the post sort of Victorian age. He helped, sort of dismantle the staid, very anal sort of Victorian social structure and mores of that particular time period. Now, someone like a Crowley who was able to integrate the Eastern tradition with the Western tradition in his particular tarot deck, the Thoth deck, do you consider someone like an Aleister Crowley or an Eliphas Levi, who, of course, was a predecessor of Crowley's in the mid-19th century, do you consider their work as being a crucial link between the ancient sort of past and in terms of magic and esotericism and the modern age of magical thinking? We've got to do a break right here. We're with Richard Smully, author of Supernatural. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
America's #1 source for independent talk radio for over a decade. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Hi, this is Ted Anderson. If you'd like to listen to GCN programs on the go, I have great news. GCN has created a Droid and iPhone application, and it's free. Just as easy as going to GCNlive.com, click on the banner, and download. Before you know it, you'll be listening to your favorite hard-hitting GCN shows, live or on demand, right on your Droid or iPhone, 24/7 and on the go. So download the Droid and iPhone app free by clicking on the banner at GCNlive.com. Thanks again for listening to GCNlive.com. Again, that's GCNlive.com. Hi, this is Ted Anderson. Have you ever wondered why banks, stockbrokers, investment advisors won't talk about gold IRAs? They've been available since 1986, yet the financial industry won't recognize the value of gold for your retirement. Gold has outperformed paper investments, yet no word about IRAs. If you would like to have gold for your retirement, call 800-686-2237. Don't get left behind by rising inflation and low returns. Call 800-686-2237. Secure your future and call 1-800-686-2237.
In the U.S., 1 in every 50 homes will have a break-in this year. Burglars call it smash and grab. Police call it robbery. We call it avoidable. We are Fake TV, a simple electronic device that can fool even professional burglars. Fake TV easily plugs into any outlet and simulates the changing colors of a television. To a burglar, it looks like someone must be home watching TV, so they'll likely move on to an easier target. At only $34.95, Fake TV costs less than a month of most alarm monitoring plans. And it's perfect if you're traveling or away from home. Order your Fake TV by calling 877-5-FAKE-TV or go to faketv.com. That's 877-532-5388 or faketv.com. Fake TV, the burglar deterrent.
Welcome back to the Paracast, the gold standard of paranormal radio. And now, here's Gene Steinberg.
Where did that come from, Gene? You and I have done 200 shows, and you've never had me do the this setup, and you do the Paracast. That's great.
Turn
Richard,
around
bring
is
it
fair
out.
play. See, Richard, you just heard a show break that was unique. It was special.
Oh, that's good.
He wants to stay out of this, you see.
Yeah, don't blame me.
We always
Wow.
blame you, Chris.
Dang. Well, I asked a question about Crowley, so I guess if anything would create a change, that would be it.
Yeah, the answer to your question is yes. And the question was really saying, did major 19th and 20th century occult figures like Crowley and Eliphaz Levi, affect the kind of the modern pagan revival? And yes, I think they did. I think the Golden Dawn, which was a Victorian. As you know, it was a Victorian occult lodge that Crowley belonged to. Was very, very influential, and I think a lot of the rites, the revived pagan religion comes from that. Now, that doesn't mean that I believe that the whole thing is just a total modern fabrication. I suspect that, let's say that there were people who were interested in, this kind of magical stuff way back when. Well, they're probably not all that.
Richard, hold on. What do you mean way back when? The Golden Dawn system of magic, its offshoots in Rosicrucianism, Freemasonry. You could go down the line of offshoots from that particular system of magic. They all claim to have some sort of connection with Egyptian high magic. Do you feel that claim is accurate? Do you think that there is a thread or a connection that goes back to dynastic Egypt? Or do you think they're just kind of playing around with that particular connection and making themselves more important than they really are?
Whether they have a connection with dynastic Egypt or not, it's not something I could say. I mean, there's no real proof of it, but it would be very difficult to prove it negatively. That is to say, to prove that there was none. But to kind of go back to what I was saying, assuming that these people, all along have been interested in this kind of thing, they probably read and studied, the magical books and texts that were around. And there were, there was a magical school in London started by a man named Francis Barrett in, around 1800. His book, The Magus, is very influential and still available. So I think the people who are into these old traditions probably, kept some very key elements of their traditions, and incorporated some that came around. I don't know. It's probably not a terribly smart thing to plug someone else's book. Or you're plugging your own, but
go ahead.
There's a book. I edited it when it came out, and I worked for certain publishers. It's called Wielding Power by Charles R. Tetworth, which has, which I believe, has some connection to the old religion and even has, some of the practices and rites of it. It doesn't look terribly much like Wicca, but it's its own version, and I would encourage people to check that out if they're interested in, what some of these old practices might have been like.
How about the alchemists? John Dee, Saint Germain supposedly had incredible abilities, whether as a magician or a conjurer. I personally have seen the big silver platter, that's on display in Versailles, that is half transmuted from silver into gold. Where do you come down on the alchemist? Do you think held in to some sort of ancient process or the ability to manipulate things based on ancient knowledge?
Well, one thing you have to consider is that, as a matter of fact, people have been producing, pretty amazing artifacts for like a long, long time. Like certain techniques of the stained glass windows of the medieval cathedrals are a famous example. So the idea that everybody was just like totally technologically primitive and knew nothing, about anything until, Mr. Science came along in, the 18th century is itself a rather naive one, I think. So I think they had I think there was genuine knowledge there. They certainly emphasized, or at least the best of them emphasized, that, this kind of work of transmutation could not be done. I mean, it can't be done in the way that science is done, in that to science today, the experimenter is supposed to be totally detached from the experiment. And the ancient alchemists and even the modern alchemists would say, no, actually, the state of mind, consciousness, preparation of the alchemist is extremely important, and it can't just be
right. Probably one of the ingredients in an alchemical process.
Right, and that's maybe take us onto off the subject, but it's another thing that has to be seriously considered when you're talking about scientific investigations of the paranormal. Because it's not quite so easy to evaluate in a lab sense than as the typical physics experiment. The state of consciousness of the researchers and the participants are extremely important.
Well, obviously, and that was determined by Heisenberg, his uncertainty principle, and the Copenhagen interpretation that the actual act of observing any sort of process is going to alter it. But, let's get back to that subject of ancient knowledge. And the opening sentence or paragraph, actually, in Chapter 8 of your book, Supernatural, is titled Masonic Civilization. And you say, Masonry. To some, the word connotes an underground cabal that, through means unknown or scarcely imaginable to ordinary mortals, topples governments and manipulates currencies, or has Beyonce flashing sigils during the halftime of the Super Bowl. To others, more adept at observation than imagination, it evokes images of solid citizens in cheap suits conjugating at the lodge on the second story of a shabby downtown commercial building. In either case, today's seekers may wonder why Masonry should interest them. Richard Smalley, should masonry interest us? Are we dealing with some sort of like deep sort of conspiratorial manipulation of world events by the power elite?
Well, if we are, I don't think the Masons as an organized body, constitute that.
Is there something akin to that that's operating besides the power of money and influence and power and control?
Well, there are always people conspiring to rule the world, and the question, and to make lots of money and so on. The question is like whether they're all in cahoots, and in the end, it's a little hard to see all of these very, very disparate interests being masterminded by some secret society hidden away somewhere.
That's exactly what Lawrence Rockefeller told me when I asked him that question. No, seriously.
Really?
He said, if you think for a second that we could even agree what to talk about, let alone where to talk about it and what we were going to have on the agenda, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Of course, I didn't believe him, but continue.
We cannot continue unless we share this time with our benefactors. Richard Smalley joining us. He's author of Supernatural. With Gene and Chris says at this time you're in
the Paracast.
Is there a secret UFO agenda? Do strange creatures from the darkest corners of the mind roam the Earth? Is there evidence for mind control, time travel, or devious government conspiracies? Find out the inside scoop on the latest conspiracies, paranormal activity, and Fortean phenomena when you subscribe to Tim Beckley's Conspiracy Journal. It's jam-packed with stories, special book and DVD promotions, and the best news, it's absolutely free, sent right to your mailbox. Plus, a bonus free email newsletter sent out every Friday. Simply send an email with your name and address to Mr. UFO at webtv.net. That's Mr. UFO at webtv.net. Find out what they don't want you to know.
Hi, this is Peter Cronschnabel from Midas Resources. As you know, federal government spending is at an all-time high, and inflation will be a direct result of the spending policy. European government and central bank spending policies have put the European Union on the brink of collapse. What are you doing right now to protect yourself financially? Are your assets working for you or against you? One thing is certain. Having physical possession of gold and silver will guarantee that no matter what happens to our economy or the dollar, your investment will never be worthless. And it will protect you from that hidden tax, inflation. If you've been thinking about investing in physical possession of precious metals or having an IRA in precious metals, I can help. Call me today, Peter Cronschnabel at 800-686-2237, extension 108. And I'll take the time to personally put together a portfolio designed to protect what you've worked so hard for. Call 800-686-2237, extension 108. You've worked hard your whole life, and I want to work hard for you. Call Peter at 800-686-2237, extension 108.
If you're considering a water filter, have you heard about Aquapail? Aquapail from FreezeDryGuy.com has huge advantages over many other water filters. American-made Aquapail units are designed and engineered to not just filter contaminated water, but capture or kill all bacteria and viruses to non-detectable levels. Aquapail has the fastest flow rate of any other water filter on the market, filtering a gallon of contaminated water in about 5 minutes. That's water when you need it, now. Get the world's fastest, safest, and most reliable gravity-fed portable water treatment system for surface, well, and wastewater sources. Aquapail. Available in 4 sizes starting at only $100. And all orders to the lower 48 ship free. Call 866-404-3663 or go to freezedryguy.com. That's 866-404-3663 or freezedryguy.com. 100% veteran owned. The Freeze Dry Guy.
Injuries, slow healing, aches and pains, constipation, weakness, fatigue are all common the older one gets. The progressive deterioration of the body that occurs almost universally the older one gets can partly to significantly be prevented with conscientious attention to nutrition. If the Hanselmen can play rugby in their 90s, then it is possible for everyone in North America to experience a more youthful life as well. One key ingredient to warding off aging and reversing some of it is the type and quality of protein consumed. All protein foods or supplements you currently consume are heat damaged, destroying 50 to 75% of your ability to utilize the bodybuilding amino acids. One World Whey is not heat damaged and allows your body to utilize 100% of the amino acids. This feat no one else has achieved. The results to your health can be amazing. Call 888-988-3325. That's 888-988-3325. Or visit oneworldwhey.com. That's oneworld.com.
We'd like to hear from you. If you have a comment or question about the Paracast, send it to news@theparacast.com. That's news@theparacast.com. And don't forget to visit our famous Paracast community forums at forum.theparacast.com.
With Gene and Chris in the Paracast, Richard Smoley, author of Supernatural, about to answer a question and comment from Chris. Richard?
Okay. I don't know quite where you want me to go with the question. I mean, do you want me to talk about like international conspiracies in general? Do you want me to?
Well, I don't know. You bring up some really interesting points about Masonry in this chapter, and why don't you go ahead and sort of encapsulate your thinking, and then maybe kind of riff on it a little bit.
Okay. Well, now the first thing you have to understand is, of course, that Masonry is not a secret society. Why is it a secret society? Well, you've heard of it, haven't you?
Well, it's an old boys club, really. I mean, it's like it's like a fraternity.
Well, yeah, and that's sometimes people complain that it's nothing more than that. Other people only want that. Well, the history of Masonry is kind of long and complicated and controversial. But the most reputable views, say that, well, Masonry kind of grew out of these stonemasons guilds, that operated in late medieval times and for various reasons became interested in mystical speculation in the 17th century. And, at that point, gentlemen who were in search of occult knowledge started to join. And, that was the transformation of what was called operative masonry into speculative masonry. Those are the terms used. The Masons were, particularly active and influential in the 18th century. They were, very instrumental in the American Revolution, the French Revolution, the unification of Italy in the mid-19th century. I
love that lithograph of George Washington with his Masonic apron on.
Right. And, and he was, obviously, quite a devoted Mason. Masonry's influence and power, well, it's kind of gone up and down. It waned seriously in the U.S. In the 1820s when there was a strong anti-Masonic movement that got started. And it started to pick up steam again in the 20th century. I think, the high point for Masonic membership, is kind of in the 50s. Since then, it sort of dropped out.
Albert Pike had a little bit to do with a spike in interest.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely. Albert Pike was, certainly a very curious figure. The author of Morals and Dogma. He was a former Confederate general. He wrote, a great deal on, Masonry and the esoteric. Now, the other thing about Masonry is, of course, that Masonry does not entail any belief. That is to say, you don't have to believe in anything except a supreme being. That's why there's like a G on the Masonic emblem.
Right, just beyond the square and on the level.
Right. All of these rituals that they go through. I mean, I'm not a Mason, so A, I haven't gone through it, but B, I'm also able to talk freely about it because I'm haven't made any pledges to anybody. as I understand it, the meanings of these Masonic rituals are always left to the individual to decide. So there's no authoritative interpretation of what they mean or what they're supposed to mean. There's a lot of literature about it. There are a lot of guesses and that kind of thing. A lot of it written by Masons themselves, but nothing that has, the kind of authority that, say a papal pronouncement would have. So, in that sense, the Masons seem very much committed to freedom of thought. They had, their heyday in the, as I say, early 20th centuries. There was a lot of fraternalism. The Masons kind of made it, they kind of went down for a while, and then they came back in the 19th century. Fraternalism, was much more important as a movement in those days.
So it's just basically a frat. There's no real conspiracy involved in the Masons, think.
I don't think that, not in any kind of, some kind of plot to take over world government or anything like that.
I think the lower levels, you could say that, but there may be a little something at the upper echelons, but we won't get into that. That would be digressing too far.
Yeah. It's something I certainly don't know. I don't have any proof or evidence of it. So, beyond a certain point, there's not much I can really say.
Okay, let's put the Masons aside. Set the Masons aside. That's the sound of Masons being set aside. Start to insult them if they're listening.
Yeah.
There's one thing I hear that obviously raises its head anytime you talk about paranormal and ancient civilizations and all this stuff. The presence of ancient astronauts in ancient times and UFOs in modern times. What's your take on it?
Well, you mentioned C.G. Jung earlier and his book on flying saucers, which was published, I think, in 1957. And basically, we're still with his verdict. People are seeing, we are seeing something, but one doesn't know what it is.
A modern myth of things seen in the sky.
Yeah. I think we're at a point where, as people often say with UFOs, 95% of the cases, can be explained away as weather balloons or whatever you like. But of course, that still leaves the 5% of very, very mystifying cases. I remember reading fairly recently, articles written by the heads of the Belgian and Brazilian air forces, which basically said, our people are seeing things. We wish the United States would share what they know about it, but they're not telling us anything at all. Now, when you're talking about the head of an air force of a major nation, you're getting to the point of beyond, crackpot theories.
Well, the other thing to bear in mind, too, is when they start worrying about what the U.S. knows and why that information isn't being shared, it has an implication, which is that there is information to be shared of some significance.
Well, that's it. Yeah. That's precisely, the question that, can't be answered. It seems fairly clear that, at a fairly early point in the whole UFO phenomenon, the U.S. government, made a point to downplay and discredit any belief in UFOs. As far as I know, it still does. But, we're now at a point where, a lot of people have seen something or another. None of the explanations are really all that great. When you get right down to it, the idea that, there's really some kind of, where would these extraterrestrials come from?
Well, the other thing here, which puts the cart before the horse here, is are they extraterrestrials to begin with before we even speculate as to where they might come from? We have Richard Smalley joining us, author of Supernatural. You're with Gene, you're with Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
Are you tired of searching for great talk radio?
Something more important.
Search no more. We are the GCN Radio Network.
Graphic Converter is the image manipulation tool for the rest of us. It does not use any database. You get full control of all your files. Want to view the images of a folder? Drag it into Graphic Converter, and a powerful browser opens up to show your image files. You could use it for slideshows. You could use it to import images from digital cameras or from scanners. Need to do some image editing? You can do that too in Graphic Converter. Also print catalogs. Convert from so many formats I can't even list them. Download now to see if Graphic Converter is good for you, like 1.5 million other users. Guess what? You could save money when you buy Graphic Converter. Use the coupon code Night Owl. Use the coupon code Night Owl to get a special price for Graphic Converter. Go to lemkesoft.com. That's Lemke soft.com. Lemkesoft.com. Lemke soft.com.
Food storage? Check. Survival tools? Check. Weapons and water filters? Check. But what about a permanent source of cooking power that can run forever without buying fuel or paying for maintenance? Introducing Afterburner Stoves, home of the original patented rocket stove, the Kelly Kettle, and the Solo Stove. Afterburner Stoves has what you need and now offers all GCN listeners our complete preparedness package with the means to cook meals and sanitize water. Whether you dig in or bug out, cook almost any meal with just a handful of sticks. We already have the lowest online prices guaranteed, but if you enter coupon code GCN at checkout, we'll knock off an additional 15% and send you our amazing 6-hour solar rechargeable light bulb absolutely free, all for only $249. Visit afterburnerstoves.com or call 866-716-5214. 866-716-5214. Afterburnerstoves.com. Cook hot meals with just a handful of sticks.
Looking back on 2012, I know personally I'm thanking God that my family and I made it through the year. From natural disasters like Hurricane Sandy and the devastating summer drought to the family hardships brought on by a disastrous economy, our hearts go out to those that have lost everything. My friends at eFoods Direct hear from customers every day that are fortunate to weather life's storm by having a supply of food on hand. Danny from New York City wrote in following Hurricane Sandy and said, "Almost all the grocery stores are closed, but I managed to get my eFoods just in time to be able to help my sister and my niece. Bottom line, it's better to be prepared 10 years too early than one day too late. Heed common sense's warning and do what I've done. Call 800-409-5633 today or go to efoodsdirect.com/Alex. They have the best tasting long-term storable food on the planet. Call 800-409-5633 and ask about the Alex Jones special or go to efoodsdirect.com/Alex. Get self-sufficient today. Call 800-409-5633 or efoodsdirect.com/Alex.
Hello?
Congratulations.
For what?
For losing all that weight. How'd you do it so fast?
ASAP.
ASAP what? What's that mean?
Are you ready to get as skinny as possible, as soon as possible, as simple as possible, and as sexy as possible?
I'm listening.
Then get with the ASAP program. It's real and it works. No smooth talk, no slick advertising, and no exaggerated claims of success.
I've got to know more.
Welcome to ASAP, as slim as possible. Whether you have 10, 20, or 50 pounds to lose, ASAP is your weight loss answer. ASAP targets the abnormal fat reserves and makes them available to be burned as fuel and contains no caffeine or hormones. Order ASAP at wholesale prices or join the team to share the business with others. Visit GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. GCNteam.com or call 877-878-4203. Lose weight and look great with ASAP, as slim as possible.
Hi, this is Nick Pope. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Gene and Chris, you're in the Paracast with Richard Smalley. And the question here that was raised, where would these extraterrestrials come from? And I mentioned to Richard, and you could respond to what I said, why even assume if they are real that they are necessarily extraterrestrial?
Well, you're right about that. The explanations that kind of posit that they come from, someplace on our planet don't seem terribly convincing either. To my mind, the debunkers are right in that, any of the explanations we can kind of think of are unsatisfying, but we're still seeing something, and our people are still seeing something, and we have to give that some kind of respect or honor.
And it's not just seeing things. There are real photographs. There is trace evidence. We have one researcher, Ted Phillips, who's collected a lot of that trace evidence and has explored it. In fact, he may be on the Paracast soon. He got in touch with me very recently about having more information to present. The point being that something is being seen. It seems to be metallic. It seems to be capable of rapid maneuvers. It seems to land. Sometimes they see creatures or entities in connection with it. So what might it be? There's a story out this week that now they have found evidence of a possible small planet, Earth-like planet, 13 light years away. And that's a tremendous distance to us. But if that civilization's a couple of thousand years ahead of us, it may just be a walk down the street.
That's interesting. I hadn't heard that. Yeah, it's, and I think it goes back to, one reason that I think we're, so interested in this area to begin with, in that we have this kind of very strong intuition that reality is more than it appears, and there's a real hunger for exploration of that and a desire to, okay, well, what is all this stuff? And a lot of times the answers are kind of very speculative or, a bit strange, but I think there is that human desire to know, and, I think that's very legitimate and it needs to be honored.
Let me throw you a wacky theory out there, since I'm pretty good at wacky theories, and that is, what if the presence of UFOs and similar mysteries is designed primarily to make us think about the possibilities they present?
Well, that's an interesting, that's definitely an interesting point of view. Of course, it leaves you with the question of, who is creating these mysteries, but it's definitely possibility. This is an area where there are not too many possibilities that are easy to rule out, right away.
Well, we can't rule out anything, but think of it this way. If there's a collective unconscious that can create UFOs that seem to be as much as we can detect real, maybe that collective unconscious is controlling our destiny as we move towards the future. Well, maybe time doesn't exist in that other world.
Maybe we're trying to pull ourselves off planet. Maybe there's some sort of collective imperative going on.
Yeah, it's the possibilities are endless. But I think, is there? I think we have to at least kind of give ourselves permission to, think about these things, and to do so in a way that's kind of neither, mindlessly skeptical nor mindlessly believing. And I think, there are certainly a lot of mindless believers, but there are also a lot of mindless skeptics out there. And
oh boy,
I think really. I think a mature, kind of sober view of that, assuming that this is what you want, of this whole situation is somewhere in between.
Well, I think one of the things we are always hoping for, which never seems to happen in the UFO field, is we go back to the beginning, because they've been doing this for 50, 60 years now. Oh, there's spaceships or whatever. It is, okay, let's start from scratch. Let's look at this case with a fresh viewpoint and say, okay, we have this phenomenon of 5 or 10% of the sightings we can identify. Let's take a look at what we know about those and start again to look for solutions. But right now, as soon as we got wind of something that seems to fly faster than we can fly, it had to be ET, and that's the end of it.
And, the one kind of hypothesis that's often advanced is that, at the very least, the government is not going to be too thrilled about the revelation that it's not capable of defending its own airspace.
Right, control issues.
Yeah, I think that's, you have to, if there are such things that are really flying around that we can't do anything about, the Air Force is probably not too thrilled to have to admit it.
Well, of course they won't. That also, it's a question of how will the population react. So if they know something, they have this guilty knowledge that something's going on, whatever the answer is, if you reveal that information, what portion of the population is impacted, what portion of private industry is impacted, What about the political ramifications in dealings with other countries?
And I think there's obviously this strong body of opinion that seems to hold that life is complicated enough, and let's just not go there.
What about looking backwards through history? Reports of flying craft throughout history. Did you get a chance, or have you had a chance to look into those stories?
Yeah, I don't. I don't know a great deal about them. There certainly have been, things like, Elijah's fiery chariot and that kind of thing. To what extent they really resemble UFOs as we know them, kind of remains to be seen. It's
well, I pardon me for interrupting, but Jacques Vallée and his most recent book, Wonders. What's it called, Gene? Wonders of Things Seen in the Sky, which is a compendium of UFO reports predating humans' ability to fly. He wrote a whole book that delineated out some really incredible sighting reports that were fairly well documented down through history.
Yeah, I'm certainly entirely capable of believing that's happened. I haven't, I don't have enough information to really have an informed opinion about what it might actually be. And again, going back to Jung and saying, yeah, well, people are seeing something, but one doesn't know what.
That book, by the way, Wonders in the Sky, written by Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck, and their publisher is the same as your publisher, Richard.
Oh, Tarcher?
Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
Let me cut in here for a minute. I just want to tell our listeners that your book has really excited me, and it's going to be on my bedstand, and I'm going to be annotating it and underlining things and really digesting some of these wonderful pearls of wisdom that you've been able, in a very effortless way, to elucidate to the reader. Your economy of style and your directness, you're one of the finest writers that we've ever had on this program, and I want to be the first one to congratulate you on this very, very, it's an important book, I think, for any seeker out there that's in any way, shape, or form motivated to really look at these questions and gain some insight. You've done just an admirable job of putting down your thoughts in a very concise manner, and my hat's off to you, and really much luck in this book, and I want to recommend it heartily to all our listeners out there.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate your saying that. That's really good to hear, and it's very encouraging.
And again, ladies and gentlemen, just to tell you before we do our final segment, the book is called Supernatural, Writings on an Unknown History, a bunch of papers by Richard Smalley. I want to ask him also a little bit about Da Vinci Code stuff, because we have the movies and the Dan Brown books and all that stuff, and I want to hear about it. But as I said before, this is a classy book printed in an old-fashioned style, and I think you're just going to love looking at the book. Real paper, real printing, and then you read it, and it's a real treat. With Gene and Chris, you're in
the Paracast.
The GCN Radio Network, providing the world with hard-hitting talk radio. GCN. Great talk radio starts here.
If you want to get your website online and you need reliable service, first-class service at the lowest possible price, there's only one place to go. Well, DreamHost has a special promotion with our show where they'll offer you unlimited disk space, unlimited bandwidth, one-click web apps such as WordPress, 24/7 support. You can save over $55. You want to know how? Go to DreamHost.com/radio, DreamHost.com/radio. Whether Whether it's personal mail, whether it's business email, you want reliable, dependable delivery, freedom from spam, freedom from viruses. Well, Polaris Mail offers professional email hosting services for your personal or small business use. Each account uses 25 gigabytes of storage, an easy-to-use webmail interface, and full mobile sync. Sign up today for a 30-day free trial at polarismail.com, polarismail.com.
Preparedness is simple when you have the right stuff. And with the looming threat of economic collapse and possible service interruption, it's time to get the best-in-class preparedness stuff at disasterstuff.com. Disasterstuff.com has been serving smart preppers for over 15 years with quality products like Berkey water filters. Disasterstuff.com is the official Berkey in-stock shipping center. And as always, free shipping on all Berkey products. Stock up on water barrels and accessories. Get Country Living or Wonder Mill grain mills, Excalibur food dehydrators, Tatler reusable canning lids, Sun oven solar cookers, EMP bags to protect sensitive electronics. And don't be without your Life Straw personal water filter, all from disasterstuff.com. Preparedness is simple with the right stuff from disasterstuff.com. Freedom through self-reliance and personal responsibility.
We all know that Berkey water purification systems are the most trusted name in water filtration. As an authorized Berkey dealer for over 6 years and serving thousands of satisfied customers, the Berkey Guy offers amazing specials for Berkey water filtration systems. The Berkey Light systems include a set of self-sterilizing and recleanable black purification elements that purify water by removing chlorine, pathogenic bacteria, cysts, and parasites to non-detectable levels and remove harmful chemicals such as herbicides and pesticides. Order the Berkey Light system today, complete with 2 black Berkey elements for only $231, and the Berkey Guy will ship your order free of charge. With the purchase of a Berkey Light, the Berkey Guy is also offering a set of fluoride and arsenic filters for only $39.99. That's over 30% off the retail price. Call the Berkey Guy at 1-877-886-3653. That's 1-877-886-3653. Or order online at goberkey.com. That's goberkey.com today.
Fall in love with food storage savings this February at BePrepared.com. Going on now, BePrepared.com saves you over $300 with a premium 1,600 one-year supply, including 126 cans of freeze-dried and dehydrated food. Or get the new gourmet 14-day food supply with a full 2,000 calories per day with pre-planned menu. Stroganoff and noodles are 20% off with purchase of 6 or more. Mountain House pork chops are back in stock at 34% off. Pack your own low-moisture foods with our new do-it-yourself Super Pail Combo on sale at 22% off. Add to your preparedness with minor surgery kits at 15% off. And wool blended blankets are only $11.89. The February Fall in Love with Savings sale ends February 28th at BePrepared.com. For contents and details, visit BePrepared.com or call 800-999-1863. The choice is clear. Be unprepared or BePrepared.com.
This is Jerome Clark, author of the UFO Encyclopedia and other books. You're listening to the Paracast.
With Richard Smollett on the Paracast, his book is Supernatural. Gene and Chris, we only have one segment left, so I just took this chapter at random. You have a chapter here where you cover secrets of the Da Vinci Code, and of course we think of the movie and the best-selling novel. So in the practical world, what secrets should we be interested in?
You mean in the Da Vinci Code or just in general?
In general, about the Da Vinci Code.
Well, I think, I think there's been a lot of debunking done, on a lot of things Dan Brown says, and, I think rightly so, although, in his defense, I mean, he is writing a book of fiction, so he's, really entitled to, made up everything in it. He does say based on...
Well, he didn't make up everything. He, Holy Blood, Holy Grail, the authors of that book actually sued him for plagiarism, but continue.
Well, yeah, but my impression was that suit was a little bit of a publicity stunt in and of itself. But I don't know that from being.
You think it sells more books if you're being sued?
Well, and it's certainly if you're the authors of Holy Blood, Holy Grail, it.
And 3 people have bought your book, and now you have this best-selling book using similar ideas.
Yeah. I think Holy Blood, Holy Grail actually sold quite well. Well, there are a lot of things to say about the Da Vinci Code. One of the ones that's most interesting is its claim toward the end of the book that we're witnessing some kind of resurgence of the divine feminine. And that's, a major point he makes in it, with Mary Magdalene and, all sorts of other things that, would, want to ruin the plot for the 1 or 2 people who left who haven't actually read it. But this kind of resurgence of the divine feminine is kind of interesting. I find it interesting because, there's, in a way, I suppose you could say there's a resurgence of the divine feminine. I mean, there's, churches are trying to avoid, what's considered to be sexist language and that sort of thing. But, any values that, would typically be considered feminine, are really not on the upsurge in our society. What we're seeing is kind of this, this constant, increasing, drive for the power motive and the profit motive. And, all these values that were, traditionally seen as feminine is like, where are they? Where is this resurgence of the divine feminine? Now, and I think that's one thing that makes the book interesting because it points to an incredible longing for a lot of these things. I think, it's quite debatable whether, we're actually seeing anything like this resurgence that he's talking about. But I think there's an enormous thirst for it. And I think that was one of the most interesting things about the book for me.
Yeah, the whole subject of the Black Madonna, I think, that's worthy almost of an entire Paracast show.
And, the figure of Mary in Christianity, Catholicism particularly, has just continued to grow in importance. From, the first century AD, nobody, paid any particular special attention to Mary, but as, the years went on and the centuries went on, she became more and more important a figure, and she just go by the number of Marian sightings there have been. I mean, she's certainly more important to many people than Jesus or God.
Well, we should also differentiate between Mary, the mother of Jesus in the Christian tradition, and the Magdalene, who, according to, Holy Blood, Holy Grail and revisionist conspiratorial thinking, Mary Magdalene was the wife of Christ, the Black Madonna. But that gets into a whole other matriarchal sort of subject that I don't think we have time to cover.
Yeah. I mean, on the face of it, there's no particular reason to believe that Jesus wasn't married. It was certainly kind of the standard practice for Jewish men in his era. The chief reason that scholars don't believe Jesus was married is that, when, like in the epistles and whatnot, they're debating about married and that sort of being married. No one's saying, well, Jesus was married, which is an argument, had it been true, they would have, been willing to make. I don't know how much you want to hang on that particular point, but that is a case that's made sometimes. Mary Magdalene is,